charges.
Clint, I had no idea you went to the shopping mall today. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name is Luke Radowski here of wearechange.org, and we have a packed house today with some really awesome and incredible human beings from some extremely diverse viewpoints that you will be hearing today on thebestpoliticalshow.com. We are going to be live for the next 2 hours, so make sure to share this broadcast with your friends and family members, as of course there is so many different things to talk about, especially when it comes to everything that's happening right now in New York City. The latest comments from the Speaker of the House and a lot of crazy geopolitical foreign policy news. We're going to get into all of it. Maybe even the Malaysian MH370 aircraft. Nothing is off topic, especially when we head over to rumble.com/wearechange right after 1 hour here on YouTube. So again, share this broadcast with your friends and family members. And if you want to participate in the conversation, you actually get to call in by becoming a member of lukeunfiltered.com, and we will be taking your phone calls at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Rumble. To sign up and to call in, just go to lukeunfiltered.com, join the Telegram channel. I am keeping an eye on the Telegram channel right now, and you guys will be able to call in. Another way to participate is by also going to mysuperchat.com. Any and every super chat will, of course, be read here as it supports this independent media organization that is predominantly sponsored through your help and support. MySuperChat.com is one way of doing that, as, of course, we're also going to be reading YouTube super chats, Rumble rants, you name it. You guys donate to us. We, of course, will appreciate it very much, as, of course, we have so many different things to get into today. Let's just get right into it with our guest today, and that, of course, is Jen Perlman. Jen, for the people who don't know you, who are you?
Who am I? So my name is Jen Perlman. I got involved in politics when I was 18 years old. Well, we met when I was running for Congress in 2020. I ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the Democratic primary in Florida's then District 23. And then from there, we transitioned that platform into our YouTube podcast show called Generational Change. And we've been doing that for 3 years.
Yeah, we definitely have a common, I wouldn't say enemy, but someone who really dislikes us with Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Does she dislike
you? She really doesn't like me, especially with the questions that I asked her a couple of years ago. But now she's a congresswoman. Not a surprise there. Clint is also here. Came late as well. So how are you, Clint?
Did not come late. How dare you, Luke? Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, and I was maybe 10 minutes late today, but it was for a good reason. I was doing an incredible interview with Ashton Forbes, the top investigator on the MH370 flight, as well as our good friend here, Ian Crossland. It was a fantastic conversation. It'll be out midday tomorrow on Liberty Lockdown. I have a strike on YouTube right now, so it'll be exclusively on Rumble. So make sure you go check it out over on Rumble. Again, that's Liberty Lockdown. Speaking of Ian.
Yeah, Clint has a strike? Wow. No, what a surprise.
What did you say? What did you do?
Not here on YouTube.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it on Rumble.
You were naughty.
Ian Crossland is here. He has been sniffing graphene the whole time.
Is it on my face?
He has sworn off. The Beanie Man, he has said he will never, ever come back and step foot in Maryland ever again. He just moved to Miami permanently. Ian, thank you so much for joining us.
The thing about Luke is he's always honest. Everything he says is true. No, Luke's a filthy liar. No, I'm just kidding. Hi, everyone. Hey, and I can vouch for Clint. He was running late because of this amazing interview. I'm still shivering as a result of this crazy technology that we were talking about. Whether or not it's real, who knows?
We'll see soon enough, but it's a fascinating conversation.
Happy to be here.
Well, we're going to talk about maybe that conversation on Rumble.
Yep.
And Stephanie is here.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. This is Steph. We Are Change. Find me on Instagram.
All right, let's just get into the main story today that this video is titled with, and that, of course, is the crisis that is unfolding right now in New York City, as we have a Daily Mail article that reads, migrant programs in New York City are collapsing as border crosser numbers explode with racial tensions rising between Latinos and African migrants who say they're being ignored. All of this as a lot of social services are running short on city became a sanctuary city, said, hey, come on in, guys. And now, because of the problem that they caused, Eric Adams is in a lot of hot water because of other incidences and accusations going against him ever since he started to speak out against this problem. And now I think this is a result of a Koch brothers plan that is essentially just screwing over a lot of poor people in New York City that are now dealing with huge problems that I don't think there's any going back from. Is there any way to go back to normalcy? Is there any way to fix this problem that we're dealing with?
I think there's one way, and it's not a popular way, but it's to actually defend the border. And you know,
We'll interject real quick. I think Rumble's not live, just so you guys know. It looks like we're not live on Rumble, but we are live on YouTube at the moment.
Ooh,
that's
okay.
what people are saying in the chat. But sorry to interrupt, Clint.
No,
it's okay. Mayor Eric Adams, he has been lamenting the fact that their social, infrastructure is crumbling under the weight of this migrant crisis. And like, if this is, it's not if this is probably up there with San Francisco, the most Democrat-ran city in the country. And if they can't sustain it, well, then I think that it's worth listening to his complaints. Instead of doing that, they've flipped it and now accused him of 30-year-old sexual harassment or something like that. So,
well, he's facing a lot of different accusations, specifically allowing the Turkish government to buy influence in New York City. The FBI just took away his cell phones. There's an accusation from 1993 that just popped up again. So a lot of this seems like maybe someone within the federal government or the intel agencies, again, we're speculating here, we don't have any solid proof here, said, hey, you better stop criticizing our policy because you're really making us look bad. So also for my guys listening on the back end here, just go to Rumble, get the streamer configuration keys, and let's put it into Streamlabs, not Streamlabs, excuse me. What do we have here? Yes, Restream. So if you guys could do that, that'd be awesome. If you can, you might have to toggle on and off and then just put in the configurations in there. But I think the problems in New York City, they're just the beginning of many other problems that a lot of cities that open themselves up to immigration are going to be facing. How do you deal with such a very desperate situation when we have hyperinflation, we have the price of goods going up so dramatically at the grocery store, the price of rent going up so dramatically? How do you deal with this kind of situation? Jen, I know you might have different perspectives here and different ideas, but what do you think of this entire mess since, a lot of people have been kind of calling it out? It's here. What do we do about it?
If you're talking about what to do right now in New York, I actually have no idea what they're supposed to do with this mess. And I do understand the concept of wanting to close borders. And I understand why people feel like that's the answer. But I think that the problem lies more with corporations that hire people that are not legal and don't suffer any sort of repercussions or penalties. So we actually want people in this country to work for wages that people in this country don't want to work for. So we want people in here to do that, and then we don't want them here. And then there's the people that are dangerous that come in, but those are not the people coming through the border. The people that are really dangerous actually are not crossing over through the border. They're coming in legally. And that's, to me, the problem that we need to be focused on. And again, these are just human beings. So in my mind, I feel like I'd want to, welcome people in, offer them a shower and a meal, and maybe give them a place to stay. So for me, I do think of this very differently, but...
Where's the claim come from that the violent migrants come in legally? Oh,
so it's not necessarily violent migrants. It's just people that are on the watch list, people that are coming in that are dangerous people. I actually have a friend whose boyfriend does that, works counterterrorism for the FBI. And one of the most frustrating things that he's dealing with is the constant harping on the border as if that's where the majority of their problems come from. And it isn't. So when you're talking about the people that are really watching people that are coming in that are dangerous, they come in legally. They just overstay. The very dangerous people aren't coming across the border. The people coming across the border are like families and mothers and children and people that are desperate and willing to walk on razor wire to get in here. And meanwhile, people from a lot of the gangs and the dangerous people who do want to come in here and do us harm get in here perfectly legally.
Do they fly in and overstay visas?
Always. There's flying in, there's driving in, there's all sorts of ways of coming in, but these are not the people that are swimming with all their belongings in their backs across the river trying to get to dry land. Those are not the people that wish us harm. And there are people that wish us harm.
It's clear to me that you're the bleeding heart type,
I am.
And I love and respect that. However, I mean, there is a limit at which immigration does become problematic, just based off of landmass, geography. Like, is there any point at which you would say, okay, this is too much?
I don't know, because I've never seen an actual fair, legitimate, just immigration system in my entire life. I grew up here in South Florida, and we have this thing called wet foot, dry foot. And when I was a kid, and I noticed that it's interesting. So when the Cubans come here, they get benefits, they get housing, they get all sorts of stuff. But when the Haitians come here, we stick them in deportation centers and then send them home. So even as a kid, I recognized, okay, so coming to this country is more like an airline ticket instead of a bus ticket. We don't all pay the same price. And I don't like that. I think whatever the path to citizenship is needs to be the path to citizenship for everybody. I think that if somebody comes here and has a record or is dangerous, then no, we don't need people coming in here and becoming citizens that are dangerous people. But I think if we get to a point where you're treating all the people equally that are coming here, I think there needs to be two forms of immigration. I think you have people that just want to come here because they want to, and people that are desperately seeking asylum. And regardless of what country you're from, whichever one of those categories you fit in needs to have whatever that process is. And whatever that process needs to keep in mind that these are human beings. Well, so that's all I'm saying.
My issue with the asylum process is if you have these two categorizations, then you have to have a hearing for everyone who claims asylum. And if that's the case, well, then you have 3 to 4 to 5 million asylum claims every year because everyone's just going to claim it regardless.
No, that's not true. Not everybody claims asylum. There's a lot of people that come and immigrate here. People that come from Canada aren't claiming asylum. I mean, there's a lot of people.
Well, the people that come across the border illegally, they tend to say that.
Okay, but now we also have to go and look at why are all those people coming here illegally in droves? What is causing that?
Well, there's lots of reasons. The war on drugs, the CIA interference in their government, the top
Okay.
one.
Well, there's also a lot of NGOs and non-government groups and organizations saying, hey, come here. There's a bunch of free money as well.
True.
So I've done a lot of reporting on the border, and a lot of these people are lied to. A lot of them are told a bill of goods that are not true at all. A lot of multinational corporations rely on immigration to, of course, lower the cost of labor.
Exactly.
They increase the cost of housing. And if you look at a lot of this, it's people from Turkey, it's people from Africa. Why are they coming and flying all the way into Latin America and then just being told to come on in? And then they have court tickets that are, 10 years, sometimes even 15 years down the line? That absolutely makes no sense at all. And it's creating a situation where a lot of the poorest people are now not going to get all the benefits that they used to get. And that is creating a lot of problem, a lot of racial tensions. We always had a lot of racial tensions within the United States, especially when new immigrants groups are kind of introduced. We had that with the Irish. We had that with the Polish. We had that with, but I think now we're dealing with a really different situation because now we're dealing with a hyper kind of globalization immigration policy that truly, I think, has been weaponized against the middle class, against the poor people in this country. And now we're spending, according to some estimates here, according to even Fox Business, that they're reporting that there's $451 billion that is going to be spent on housing and care for these illegal immigrants that were told to come here. That to me is just crazy.
I mean, that's more money than we've sent to Israel. That's more money than we gave to Ukraine for their entire war against Russia. And everyone's been upset about that quantity of money, and this is going towards this immigrant class that is ultimately now running afoul of some of the Democrats' strongholds. I think that's the most fascinating dynamic, is that the Democrats, the party broadly, has been endorsing these types of policies, and now they have many of their voters that are saying this is breaking our way of life.
Yeah. Here's the Fox Business report, just so people could understand the severity of this and how severe it is.
Committee on Homeland Security majority, they say the price tag per year is $451 billion. That is both for the housing and care of the asylum seekers as well as those known gotaways.
That's crazy right there. That's a lot of money that, of course, we clearly don't have. We clearly keep printing money out of nowhere. We clearly also keep borrowing money out of nowhere. We clearly also keep taxing people to the point where it's becoming difficult for the average person to survive, as the middle class is just being absolutely eviscerated. And Bernie Sanders used to talk about this. He no longer talks about this. He also talked about the Koch brothers plan. He no longer talks about the Koch brothers plan, as of course there was a shift in the narrative here. But if we really did care about people, we wouldn't be selling them a bill of goods. There's also a lot of brain drain that's being created with this immigration that's kind of screwing over the countries that is having a lot of its kind of hardest working individuals and most kind of individuals who are willing to take more risks and work leave the country. So Latin America is getting screwed over by this. Who's really winning? The multinational corporations that are using these people as slave labor, and the Democrats that are essentially ensuring their future Democratic voting base.
Yeah. Well, let me add, as a California refugee and an entrepreneur that was producing hundreds of thousands in tax revenue for the state, I fled in part because, well, the lockdowns was the primary reason, but there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are now leaving California, leaving New York. And when you have the job creator class that leaves these states because of just a series of you can call them mismanagements if you want to be nice. I would say it's the intentional collapse of these states. But regardless, what that means is that you then have, less skilled labor in the migrant class that comes in. You have the people that are actually the job creators flee because of the tax burden that is now put on the entrepreneurial class. They don't want to have to pay for all this. And if anybody is watching that's from California, you already know what the tax burden is like in California. It's absolutely backbreaking. You add on to that the inflation that has come from Federal Reserve policy, including our Treasury, which spends into oblivion, the interest rate manipulation that was held at the zero bound for over 10 years, which is just pure suicide, economically and financially. It's just a series of events that, when you add them all up, it creates a very bad dynamic. And I think that these states that are endorsing these policies are going to pay a huge price.
I think the money should come from the corporations that are the reason that we're having this problem, because that's the reality. This is about capital. It's always about capital. So the corporations end up getting benefits instead of getting the sticks, and they get carrots. And so then they just get to keep doing it. And then meanwhile, these poor people that are told whatever they're told and come over from wherever they come over, for the most part, are desperate people seeking a better life, right? From wherever they're from. Like, these are not people that are in a good way. And so for me, I feel like, we need to treat people with kindness.
I think we also need to discern what kind of corporations, because a lot of people have corporations. I have a corporation,
right?
And
right.
I think I think people are kind of triggered by that, because they say, hey, if you tax the corporations, all of us, essentially, this is what people's interpretation are, and I'll let you kind of clear the record. They're like, the cost is going to go down to the consumer, and prices are going to go up if we just go after all the corporations. There are other corporations like BlackRock, State Street, Bayer, former Monsanto, that do take advantage of the financial system, that do screw us over, but they're usually the biggest kind of beneficiaries of government programs. So how would you answer those kind of criticisms?
Well, no, that's true. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, technically, my little thing is a corporation too, and I'm certainly not the problem. No, we're talking about corporations that basically have paid for our government. They own everybody. They own Congress, they own all three branches of government, and they own the fourth estate, right? Those are the people that are reaping the benefits from the illegal immigration. It is certainly not corporations like you. I know that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so, no, but I think people need to understand that. I mean, look, we're looking at something where those three corporations, you're talking BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they're going to own 60% of single family homes. They say, I think it was like within the next 10 years. And those are the kinds of corporations that we should all be concerned about. They're the ones that are manipulating and getting like things like subsidies and benefits and socialism from the government, and yet they don't have to pay.
Yeah, I would say that they got so much support that they can't even be considered private. I think they're quasi-public institutions that have essentially have hijacked our government and are using it for their own personal kind of benefit. I want to read off some super chats before going to the next story with what the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just announced, which is absolutely crazy. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, but let's read off some of your super chats. Of course, we got one here by the redheaded libertarian,
Josie.
She's a nice lady. She's going to be actually on with us next week. She says 2023, 200,000 / 2 million migrants detained at the border, 10%. I think you're pointing out to how many people were detained and how many people got through. Again, I think it would be kind of difficult to verify those numbers, but with what we are seeing in New York City, you never know. We got another super chat here by Jeffrey Perry saying, "Hey Ian, I played percussion for you and Tim at the first Timcast event. Could I get a photo of that? Or maybe Carter Banks would have it also. Got great health and biblical videos. Can I send them?"
I wish I could answer that question. I don't think if anyone has a photo of that, I don't know who it is, but I can try and ask around. Maybe message me on Twitter or something.
We got another super chat by I'm Not Your Buddy Guy saying, quote, "One of my faves is artificial intelligence and its programmers being Malthusian and anti-human, creating parameters that will have the AI conclude humanity must end." Yes, it's a very optimistic super chat here by I'm Not Your Buddy Guy. Thank you for that. As of course, the humans are doing a good job at destroying and wrecking this economy, especially with the government that we have now, as the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just announced that aid for Israel and Ukraine is, quote, a priority, as the United States is expected to send an additional $75 billion to Ukraine and aims to send $14.3 billion to Israel, as the Speaker of the House had this to say today.
Ukraine is another priority. Of course, we can't allow Vladimir Putin to march through Europe, and we understand the necessity of assisting there. What we've said is that if there is to be additional assistance to Ukraine, which most members of Congress believe is important, we have to also work in changing our own border policy. And so there's been a lot of thoughtful negotiation ongoing with that. I think most of our Senate colleagues recognize that those two things need to move together because we owe that to the American people. That's what they're demanding that we do.
So what do you think about this new kind of proposition with the Speaker of the House saying, hey, we'll give the military-industrial complex their sacrifice. We'll give them more Ukrainian men. We'll give them more conflict in the Middle East, but we'll secure our border. What do you make of that deal? You're shaking your head, Clint.
I'm furious. When I hear politicians talk like this, I think it borders on traitorous. Honestly, the economic conditions of the United States domestically are so dire for the average person, and to be shipping by billions, if not trillions, overseas for conflicts that are proxy wars with nuclear powers that have a larger nuclear arsenal than the United States does itself. It's not just psychopathic, it's also just a complete violation of their duty to uphold and defend the Constitution, much less the American people. It makes me furious.
I don't think Putin wants to march across Europe. Russia would get obliterated if they started invading a bunch of European countries. He wants a shipping lane into Crimea. It's blatantly obvious he wants East 105 and East 97, those two freeways. And he wants to secure access to Sevastopol so he can ship their steel out of the Black Sea. That's what they want.
He's never come close to Poland. In fact, the only bomb that dropped on Poland was from the Ukrainian military. So it's just an absurdity that this is a threat to NATO. It's total fear-mongering nonsense as far as I'm concerned.
And then the Ukrainian government tried to use that event to say that it was Russia attacking Poland and that NATO must intervene immediately, not look into this, not investigate this, which I thought was extremely dangerous and extremely reckless for Volodymyr Zelensky to do all of this. Now, I kind of want to leave it to you, Jen, because there's a lot of people on different political spectrums. Some of them on the right agree with the war in the Middle East, but they disagree with the war in Ukraine. On the left, you kind of have a lot of individuals agreeing with the war in Ukraine, but disagreeing with the war in the Middle East. What's your kind of perspective on this? Since us personally here, we're anti-war. We don't want any of this, but what's your kind of take on the situation?
I'm always anti-war, so I'm against the next war. To me, this is just the military-industrial complex. And when we talk about what's going on in Ukraine, I feel like it's like everything else. People only know the most recent things, and they're not even willing to go back to, like, say 2014 or whatever the key dates were when there were starting to be a lot of current issues with what's going on in Ukraine. And it's sort of like with Israel, everyone thinks this started on October 7th. And that's just not the case. I am not somebody who knows enough about Ukraine and Russia. We have had people on our show to talk about this specifically because I don't know enough about it to really comment. But I know that I don't trust anything that's coming out that is encouraging war, because I know that they're just beating the drums for war because they love that. There's so much money to be made. That's all we produce anymore. So, how would we go against our main industry?
And woke ESG ideology. That's also something that has been exported a lot.
I find it weird that people are for one and not the other. The whole thing is absurd to me.
Well, it's a psychological operation that's being ran on a binary. So like the conservatives are just knee jerk will defend Israel to the end of the earth. So they target them with the propaganda saying, all history began 6 weeks ago,
Right. Yeah.
And with the Ukrainian propaganda campaign, it has targeted the left, saying, how Vladimir Putin stole our election in 2016 and gave it to Trump. Well, we hate Putin, right? Yeah, we do. And don't pay attention to the fact that there was a civil war that was going on in the eastern portion of Ukraine for the past 8 years. It's irrelevant.
Right.
We have to defend democracy, and it's a propaganda campaign, and both sides have fallen for it to a large extent. It makes me sad.
Yeah. Well, I never did fall. I mean, I never believed any of that, but I did notice an inordinate amount of people started changing their profile pictures to Ukrainian flags.
No kidding.
And what's interesting is now you've seen the transition. Some of the Ukrainian flags have transitioned to Israeli flags, but yet they don't know what they're talking about. They're just going rah, rah. And meanwhile, I think that from my understanding, the groups that we're funding in Ukraine are pretty Nazi type organizations, like self-proclaimed. I mean,
very far right ideologies that are linked to extremism.
Yes.
That all the social media companies really don't like, but when it comes to Ukraine, they're like, yeah, let's not really look at that, which was
okay. So I'm not imagining that's who we're arming there, and
No.
then isn't that the exact opposite of what we? I mean, do we forget that Russia was on our team? Did we forget that if it wasn't for them, like we could potentially be living under the Third Reich?
And it's not only that, but there used to be a partnership between Russia, where Russia was even warning us specifically about the Boston Marathon incident, that they intervened and gave warnings to the United States, shared intelligence. And when you look at the larger kind of Thucydides trap that's kind of unfolding between China and the United States, I think it would be more advantageous to kind of go to Russia and be like, okay, let's at least do a little business here. Let's you have a lot of natural resources. Europe needs it. The West needs it. Let's at least try to partner up business-wise, because China is doing a lot of business with a lot of different countries, and that's proving to be a lot more effective than the kind of militarism American foreign policy doctrine, which is essentially use the petrodollar, or we're going to take out your leader, we're going to bring in the economic hitman, or we're just going to bomb you and, of course, get the rebels, freedom fighters, to come in there and take a very sharp object and shove it where the sun doesn't shine, with Hillary Clinton then laughing and smiling about that particular incident. That's the American foreign policy doctrine. That's ridiculous.
We saw heat. I won't finish it because I don't know if I'm allowed to. But yeah,
Do we all equally hate her?
Yes.
Like, can we all equally agree on that?
I don't hate her, but I mean, she's definitely
you should.
She's
involved
pretty
in the
evil.
liberal economic order's conquest of Libya. That's for sure.
She's a pretty evil person.
Ian, would you date her?
Well, I'm single now, so what the hell?
No,
I don't think I date her. She's got a husband, man.
Confirmed.
Yeah, that's not the issue there.
No, I mean, I want to help. I want to help these people. I think that villainizing each other right now is not the way forward. Like,
No,
we need
some
to
people
fix
just
our
are villains,
home.
though. Some people just are.
I've seen people become evil, and I've seen people become good. So,
All right, well, I'm holding out
Ian.
on her. I'm going to say that ship sailed with her.
50 years of Joe Biden's evil. You're still convinced that he can have a change in his twilight years?
The career politician that sold this country out and is essentially the politician of the lobbyist group that even Barack Obama criticized. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a famous saying of what Barack Obama said about Joe Biden being a man of the lobbyists. Does that ring a bell? It doesn't ring a bell.
No, but it
That's
doesn't
okay.
surprise me. I mean, I've been looking at him. I don't know that I might be the oldest person here, but I mean, I remember thinking about him back in the 80s when he was in Congress and thinking that he was a total POS then.
Because he was.
Well, he is. I mean, he
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
And even then, I remember thinking, and this was before the Democrats were so completely co-opted by Wall Street, and before that, this was when Democrats still, in theory, were the party of labor.
Right.
And yet, he was never that.
No.
I love how he tries to present himself like, I'm just regular Joe. No, you're not.
No, Joe Biden of the 1980s, for those that are young and don't know this,
Yeah.
he would have been considered one of the most hardline right-wing
Yes.
politicians in today's parlance. I mean,
Very
that's who he was. He was responsible for the 3 strikes laws and all the war on crime and all
the
of
war
the
on drugs.
The war on
Yeah.
drugs. Yeah, all of it. I mean, all of it. He was just absolutely a right winger.
Yeah.
I got an email from him today. It's from actually no reply at studentaid.gov, and they told me, congratulations, your student loan's been forgiven because of my actions my administration took to make sure you received the relief. I didn't ask for that, but they
Well-
just printed up your money and paid off my
Well,
debt.
it's a small percentage too that got it. Like you must be in that. I mean, they tapered it down and tapered it down.
Which makes no sense because I'm making killer money right now.
It-
I have no idea what the hell's
it
going
makes
on.
perfect sense because you prophesied your love of authoritarianism, Ian. And they're like, this guy really loves the state.
They felt like you were a kindred spirit.
They basically forced me to pay my loans back early by doing it with your money.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
insidious what they just did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit.
I took out
but
20
this just happened a couple minutes
I
ago.
just got an
which is
email
wild.
like 30 minutes ago that in August they paid off all my debt. I had 19,000 in student loans I took out over the course of 4 years in the 1999 era. I paid off about 8,000 of it. Had another 10,000 left, and they just sent me an email like, no, not anymore.
Well,
No,
just
don't worry, we charged everybody in the United States to pay for it for you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add on that. I mean, this is what all social programs are. It's extracting, and in reality, it's not even extracting money from the producers. Usually, it's just printing and inflating the currency so that we don't even actually, we don't sense it. We just know it years down the road as the price consistently increases.
And if it happened to me, that means it probably happened to some other people. I'm interested to
No,
see
you're
if
the only one.
Yeah, maybe it was just me.
It was
Maybe I
just
lucked
you.
out. Maybe I won the lottery on this one.
They wanted you to go on IRL and talk positively about the Biden administration.
I'd like to see some transparency on how much money was printed to pay off all this student debt. If you're going to tell the loan agencies, screw you, you're not getting it back, that's one thing. But if you're going to tell the loan agencies, don't worry, we'll give you your money back early and we'll make all these Americans pay for it.
You got to understand though, most of the money that comes from these for the student loans is also tax. It's also Treasury created funds. So like whether they have to write that off or they print it and pay those people off, it's almost irrelevant.
Those people need to just go away.
Yeah. How much is the national debt right now?
Almost
I got the debt
34
clock.
trillion.
$33.8 trillion plus whatever Ian's bad student loan debts.
Oh, my God.
were
Yeah,
a
thanks
part-
for that.
Thanks, Ian.
That's $200 billion more than like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks
Oh
ago.
no,
or
no.
something.
We went from 33. We will hit 34 trillion by the time this year is out. In about 4 months, we will have added the most recent trillion. It took us 200 plus years of American history before we got our first 1 trillion in debt. 200 plus years. Now we're doing it in 4 months. It's almost over, folks. I want people to understand.
Hey, but the Ukrainian corrupted oligarchs need their hush money, okay? Where else are they going to buy their illicit chemicals that we can't talk about here on YouTube? Where else are they going to buy their mega mansions and their yachts?
Well-
Are you saying the money's not helping the regular Ukrainian people?
Yeah,
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I think it's pretty clear that that's exactly what's happening, as there's a lot of corruption in Ukraine. Ukraine is known as a very corrupt state, and one of the reasons why it hasn't officially been a part of NATO and a lot of other alliances inside of Europe, mainly because their politicians will do anything for a buck. This is why there was a lot of we can't even say this on YouTube. We're gonna try to say it on Rumble. We got another super chat on mysuperchat.com. Too spicy to talk about here, but I pulled up the Elon Musk tweet in regards to this that was deleted. We will also be talking about that on rumble.com/wearechange. But to get back here on this particular topic here, what's happening in Ukraine, I think, is the government going all in on a lost war. I think the war is going to be over as soon as the next president of the United States is announced. As soon as that next president gets into the Oval Office, that war is over. I think Biden is trying to cling on for this war as much as he can, because if he loses it during this election cycle, there's absolutely no way the Democrats could get out of such a negative PR marketing nightmare that they fully invested into. And I think this is why we're also seeing articles like this from Breitbart that talk about how, quote, all allies agree Ukraine will join NATO, says alliance boss. And this is specifically the latest comments from the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, who I believe is also a Bilderberg member, who came out and essentially said, yep, their membership in NATO is pretty much guaranteed here, as now we have other reports from Europe saying, Not really, as the United States and Germany, quote, remain reluctant to support quick Ukraine NATO accession. Why is this happening now? Why is there mixed communication about Ukraine joining NATO? Well, that's because this conflict is not looking good for the Ukrainians, and I think it's a negotiation tactic, as Russia has made it a red line and said specifically, if Ukraine joins NATO, this means we are in a full all-out war. So I do believe that this is a negotiation strategy for the Ukrainians, who clearly are not doing really well in this conflict.
If you check out Russia-Ukraine battle map, and you pull one of those up, and you look at the land Russia has conquered.
Do you want to send it to me, Ian, on Twitter?
Sure.
DM it to me on Twitter, and I'll put it up here. But you see the progression, and it's absolutely minuscule. The spring offensive, I think, was estimated to bring back 0.4% of the Ukrainian land. How many people died during that Ukrainian spring offensive? Counteroffensive? Holy frickin' cow!
Aren't
The
they at
numbers
like
are
hundreds of thousands?
Yes. Like some people estimate 600,000,
Yeah.
which is insane, because you look at the war in Vietnam, which was brutal for America. That was like 60,000 individuals. 600,000 individuals. Those are the estimates. If it's true, who knows? We don't know the official numbers. They haven't been confirmed here.
Even if it's a quarter
I
million,
sent you a link, by the way.
based off of percentage of population of their nation versus America during Vietnam, it's catastrophic. It's an entire generation of young men that have either been just eliminated from the face of the earth, or they have fled the country entirely because they didn't want to be conscripted. So I don't see a fruitful future in any period of time for Ukraine. But what's so tragic about this is that this was all provoked by the U.S. empire. Like, really, if you look through the history of this, Scott Horton did an incredible book on it called Provoked. It's how the new Cold War has began with Russia, and it was basically 15 years of interference in what amounts to, if Russia was interfering with politics in Tijuana, that's essentially what we were doing in Ukraine. And they had enough of it. And they have said repeatedly.
Well, the U.S. and the intel agencies are intervening in the politics of Tijuana.
Well, of course.
And it was Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and the intelligence agencies that went over to Ukraine, especially during the Maidan Revolution, and helped inspire the current situation that we are in right now.
But my point is, it's not Russia that's intervening in Tijuana politics. If they were putting in some pro-Russia, dictator into Tijuana, the U.S. would have a serious say about that. If they started to blow up trade agreements, if they said, hey, we're going to be partners with you, we'll send you munitions, it's all good. Like, none of this would be permissible from an American worldview. But we don't look at them and say, you also have control over your hemisphere's dominion, even though you're a nuclear power. I'm not saying that it's good or proper or anything like that. I'm just saying it's totally unreasonable that the American empire can tell them, we have more say over your trading routes and your region than you do. China and Russia look at that and they laugh. And this is them finally putting their foot down. It was inevitable.
Ian, by the way, I have the map pulled up.
Yeah,
so
pull
if you
this
wanna
up. Take
talk
a look
about
at this. It looks like this is what Russia wanted, and this is what Russia has, and that the war is over.
Yep.
So I don't know what they want to do. Russia has been fortifying this land. They took all this land east of the Dnipro River. They have the freeways down into Crimea. You see that's that bottom peninsula outlined in black. That's where their shipping port is in Sevastopol. They took it. They have it. It's over.
Yeah, they have the land bridge here, which secures their only open sea port that is vitally important for them and has been directly attacked by the Ukrainians.
What happened is when the Soviet Union was split up by the oligarchs in like 1989 or whenever it was, whoever decided what land's going where said, hey, this portion that's in the red right here is going to go to Ukraine, not to Russia, because we don't want Russia to be a local hegemonic power. We want to stifle their ability to ship through the Black Sea. So we'll give all this to the Ukrainians. And I'm sure that pissed off all sorts of Russian bureaucrats. Like, we need access to the Black Sea.
Well, they expected that they would still have somewhat of a positive relationship with them, because there's about half the population is Russian speaking, and many of them view themselves as being Russian.
That's why they're in this mess.
Right. Well, but also they had a 50-year lease on Sevastopol that was torn up by Zelensky after the coup. Or not Zelensky, it was the other guy. But regardless, that was the red line. It was ascension into NATO and also Sebastopol. They had to have that. It's their only year-round warm water port. Well, everybody knew this. And when I say everybody, I mean the U.S. State Department knew this. There's cables that came out through WikiLeaks where this was all disclosed, that Condoleezza Rice knew about this. Everybody in our political establishment knew that this war was going to happen if we didn't stop messing with them. And we just refused. And then it turns around and we go, look at at Putin just invading for no reason at all. It's just a lie. They've just lied to you.
What really bothers me is how Turkey is in all this, because if Russia's gonna start shipping through the Black Sea, that means they need to go through the Bosphorus Strait, which is controlled. It's right through the middle of Turkey, Constantinople, Istanbul, whatever. It goes right through. So the Turkish are now going to have massive trade ties with the Russians. And I've heard that they're sending money to Gaza to help the Muslim Brotherhoods arm Hamas now. It's like, if we piss off Turkey, that's a very, very, very bad thing for the United States.
That's a bad thing for NATO.
Yeah,
that's
Turkey's
a whole
in
NATO. Right. That's a whole other can of worms.
It's probably the most powerful Arab military in NATO. And maybe in the world. So the fact that they are already posturing, threatening Israel, because they have been. There's been these marches with hundreds of thousands of Turks that are in the streets, all with this crazy blood red flag. It's pretty intense if you watch these protests. These people are very unhappy with Israel right now. And you're right. Like, also, you can drive them into the arms of Russia. Basically, what I'm saying is I think that NATO is on its last legs.
This is not happening in a vacuum. For you listening, this is something you can change. This is what you should be talking about and screaming about in public and making noise about. This is your country and your world. Do not let this happen under your nose.
Well, I don't know about screaming. Screaming is not always the best effective way.
Amplify your voice. Let's put it that way. Use media. Use ways to amplify your voice. You don't have to get loud. Just make sure a lot of people hear you. Is what I mean.
But I agree. Your voices do matter. As of course, what we see on the corporate media on CNN, MSNBC is just constant pro-war propaganda, financed by the Pentagon, financed by the military-industrial complex. There's very few, if any, independent anti-war voices, and if they do represent those voices, they're usually canned, kicked off the network, given golden handcuffs like Jesse Ventura was given, or just totally kicked off the network like very surprisingly Cenk Uygur, and also very interestingly Tucker Carlson, who also represented anti-war voices, anti-establishment voices in some way, and were totally axed from the corporate media, axed from having a conversation with the American people through the mainstream, mainline television that only serves the purpose of war propaganda. And I think that's exactly what we're getting in Ukraine. That's exactly what we're getting in Israel and inside of the Middle East. And it's just a ridiculous proposition that we're told, saying, hey, just pay a little bit more for groceries. Just pay a little bit more for rent. Just pay, because you know what? We got more wars to fund. They're not going to fund themselves. The United States needs to fund these wars, and that to me is ridiculous. I don't want my money going there. You guys already take too much of my money. I believe in no taxation. All taxation is essentially theft, in my opinion. I don't know if you would agree or disagree, but that's just my personal take on this issue.
You know what? Actually, I don't really have that much of an opinion on that. I really don't. It's not one of those things I've put that much thought into. See, you just presume. You presume when you.
How are you going to have these social programs without taxes?
Well, okay. So the thing is that on a federal level, I don't believe our taxes actually pay for anything. I think it's
so you
just,
mean state level taxes?
Yeah. Well, state level taxes do pay for things because states are sovereign and they don't have their own currency. So that's a whole different thing.
I can deal with that. If you want to compromise and get rid of federal income tax, we're in business, sister.
I have no problem with that. Like, I don't even think that's a real thing. The money doesn't go anywhere. It's not like somebody's collecting all that money to go help us pay for things. But there are certain things that part of our collective resources that we should have, that I do believe we should provide. And it isn't one of those things like, again, I don't think federal tax dollars pay for anything. So when I say we should have publicly funded college, or that I think we should have universal health care, that doesn't mean your taxes go up. In fact, a lot of people could demonstrate that your actual taxes would go down in theory because we would actually be paying less for healthcare than we are paying. I mean, there's lots of studies on this. But no, I'm not like a big tax the people thing. I think that we need to take the cap off of Social Security. I mean, I think there's certain things that we can do, but no, I'm not like a tax them.
Well, if you take the cap off Social Security, that is a federal tax. But
it is, but that's the one when people are starting to say things like, "Oh, well, Social Security is going to lose its all of those things." Is when I come up with things like, then you would want to. There's certain things that you could do to help if that's what you believe to do.
Sure. I would just respectfully kind of disagree, because I don't want my money going to public education. I think public education is indoctrination. I think we've learned throughout the last few years they propagandize children, they lie to children, they teach them how to to be order followers. We're living in an outdated education system based on the Rockefeller kind of funding all the way back many decades ago that essentially teach children how to be good factory workers. So
you're talking about the type of education. That's a whole different animal. I mean, I think our education system's a disaster. I mean, I would look at like Finland. I mean, there's definitely places that have better education. We're horrible. So I'm by no means a proponent of how we do education, but education to me in general is a public good. Healthcare is a public good. I prefer to be around healthy, educated people, not stupid, unhealthy people. That's just me. I think we're all better off when people are healthy and have an opportunity to educate themselves.
But I think everybody agrees with that. The issue is whether or not it's privately or publicly funded through coercion or force or violence. And that's where I side with, like, yeah, I want people to be educated, but I also don't want these systems that you lament how destroyed and crappy they are, the public school system. It's like, well, you have to withdraw that funding. Otherwise, there's no incentive to change. And I think that's the issue, not just with our schooling system, but also with our military industrial complex. You have to shrink the size of the government. Leftists always critique corporations. And I'm like, the reason that these corporations are such behemoths is because they are the first to the trough, the federal trough. They are just extracting so much of the wealth from the American people. The only answer to me in that scenario is to shrink the size of the government. The left tends to identify the problem, but then they say, but we can just modify it in some way and it'll be better. It's like, no, you have to shrink this.
No, I don't disagree with that. I always talk about, to me, the idea is to decentralize and have small, sustainable communities. I mean, like, I am someone who doesn't want to live how we're living now.
Awesome.
So I am someone who just bought a camper and wants to go live somewhere and have chickens. So like my
people.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like, I believe in living in small, sustainable communities and letting communities decide what are best for them.
Yeah.
That's
called anarchy, though.
Again, I told you I'm kind of on the.
She's an anarcho-communist.
I've been called that. I've been called worse. Yeah. But I just think certain things are societal goods, and that as a civilization, you come together to be able to have those things, because otherwise, every man's an island.
You know, my issue with universal healthcare, I used to be like, yeah, everyone should have free access to that, is when people make themselves sick with sugar and bad food, and then they cost me money because they got to go get their heart checked out. Like, if you're too lazy to control your diet, I don't want to pay for you.
But I say that about people that ride motorcycles.
Exactly.
I feel like that. But see, now you're being now that gets very authoritarian, right? Like, as to where you spend your money and how you eat and what you do. And
people, I had this conversation with Jimmy Dore, people that take unnecessary risks. Like, how liable am I to cover the cost of their failure if they fall down and break their leg riding a motorcycle?
Of course.
Should I have to pay? I'm on the side of emergency care. I'm all for it. But if someone continuously goes and rides a motorcycle and continuously breaks their leg over and over and over, like,
but how are you going to monitor that? How do you manage that?
I don't know.
Well, the way you manage is you make them pay for their own care. And if they can't afford it, then they don't get service anymore.
But I'm just on the thing of, like, chronic healthcare with food, certain things like, some things are congenital. You're born with it. I get, maybe that's a discussion I could have. But, like, people that eat themselves sick and then expect me to pay for it, it's like, that's dirty.
Now, but would you acknowledge that there are certain segments of our society that don't have access to healthy food? There are things called food deserts. I have several of them in my congressional district. So, I mean, I've seen these places where you can go X amount of miles without hitting a supermarket, and people that don't have transportation, and their best thing to do is go to the local convenience store, which is just full of crap. So that's, or you'll notice there's no shortage of fast food. You go into certain neighborhoods, all you're going to see are junk.
Yeah,
a lot of that.
I would say that's also because of the consumer as well. People deciding to choose what to buy, because if people were buying fruits, vegetables, and meats, they would have that available at the store because people were buying it. But if they're kind of advertised this crap, because I'm even a little bit. I want to make a bigger point stepping outside of this, because the whole entire food industry is corrupt. The entire FDA is corrupt. The whole medical industry is corrupt. The whole insurance industry is corrupt. Big pharma is corrupt. All of them are corrupt. And who's really responsible here? Is it going to be fixed by giving more money to government? Is it going to be fixed by people understanding that they're on their own and they need to make better choices? I'm more inclined to go in that direction personally myself. And I think there wouldn't be food deserts if people were more of informed consumers. We're not informed consumers. We're told, here, eat this seed oil, eat this high fructose corn syrup. The FDA says it's good for your heart, which is ridiculous and absolutely crazy.
You think 12 servings of grains per day isn't healthy, Luke? Like I was told my entire childhood. I mean, we definitely have an issue with education when it comes to health. But my point would be about all those industries that Luke just pointed out being corrupt. if you look at the percentage of revenue that they get because of federal contracts, it's astronomical. So much of what the reason that they are these behemoths is because they are fascistic enterprises. The public-private partnership is killing us. We don't function in a free market system. We function in a fascist one. And instead of calling Donald Trump a fascist when he's actually not really, we ought to identify the fact that we have a fascistic corporate public alliance that is destroying our speech rights, our health. The military industrial complex is another example of this. The examples go on and on, that you must starve the beast. Until you do that, you will not have free market competition, and these Goliaths will continue to grow.
Yeah, someone made a very interesting point in support of you, Jen. This was also a Jennifer Moffitt saying fruit and meat costs more than junk. And yeah, I would agree with that sentiment as well. There are a lot of really crappy stuff with huge long lists of ingredients that are very cheap.
Well,
things
but
that
do you
have
know
one
why?
ingredient are not. Subsidies, government participation, tax incentives, and essentially Bill Gates controlling our food supply.
Is that
as
not a
he's binding
problem?
up
It's a big problem.
Huge problem.
Bananas are cheap.
Yeah.
Like, bananas are cheap. There's no excuse. Buy and eat bananas. That's your sugar source. I can't stand people that are lazily buying packaged crap and getting fat. I cannot take it, man. It's so annoying.
And the reality is, too, I do understand the argument about the food deserts. I do side with Luke more that it's consumer demand that is making so those businesses don't arise there because people aren't actually trying.
It's part that.
It's part that. Sorry, I was going to make another point, but I totally got distracted. So go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things is that, like, say, for example, Whole Foods. Why would you not find a Whole Foods in certain neighborhoods? Well, obviously the people in those neighborhoods can't afford to shop at a Whole Foods. And so this is where people would say, okay, maybe there could be subsidies for some companies that do want to provide an important service of providing healthy food in places that might not otherwise be profitable. Those are the kinds of subsidies that I wouldn't mind. So when we're talking about, subsidizing certain companies for what they do, that would be one that would make sense to me, so that you could have healthy food options in a neighborhood, and you could have that be, because there's neighborhoods that it will never be profitable enough.
Let me just point something out to you. So Whole Foods, I think, was acquired by Amazon, if I'm not mistaken.
For sure.
So these subsidies that you're offering are going to go directly to Jeff Bezos.
Well, I don't look. I pointed that out because it's just a healthy market. Pick a market, any market. It could be anybody.
But my point is, regardless of, like, I understand the sentiment. You're like, if there's going to be subsidies, that's an industry I wouldn't mind because it would help these people that want to have healthier food supply. The reality is, though, that Jeff Bezos has the most money and the most lobbyists and the most relationships with the government. Yeah. It's going to be Whole Foods, and Jeff Bezos is going to be the guy that actually walks away with that subsidy. So this is the problem with the size of the government. This is the problem with the entire subsidy industry, is that the corporations ultimately write these laws. So whether your sentiment is good and proper or not and moral, it's going to end up being corrupted.
Oh no, it'll turn into a complete crap show. But in theory, which is the idea of small sustainable communities,
I got you.
Is that each small sustainable community would be able to have healthy foods for its people. So, like, I was part of a couple of community garden projects that we did in my food desert area, and those are the kinds of things that we look, and now we say, oh, we're going to get grants, because you could reach out and get some grants if you have the proper nonprofit. Those are the kinds of projects that I would want to be getting subsidized, those kinds of projects. So no, it doesn't have to be a Whole Foods, but just to have access to places. It is never going to be profitable in some neighborhoods to have certain types of things available to those people. It just won't be profitable.
Yeah. Let's continue the conversation and let's get into the Middle East, because I know you have a lot of very interesting takes on that particular matter on Rumble. Before we do, I want to read off some of the super chats that we got here. We got one here from Dick Dickerson saying, Seamus, and he said it in Polish, smells like failure. And yeah, hey, Dick Dickerson, I agree with you. I was like, why does, every time I came back to the Beanie compound, I was like, why does my chair smell so weird? This doesn't smell nice. It was like a mix of like really bad, cheap alcohol and potatoes and smelling like failure.
And he doesn't even drink, which makes it even weirder.
No, he drinks all the time. He's a secret boozer.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. He's Irish. For
Total
frick's
alcoholic.
sakes.
I didn't realize
this
that.
This guy's like pounding down like Jamesons from the Rothschilds and vodka
Wow.
and like whiskey.
I heard he's not even actually Catholic, which is crazy.
He's drunk. Most of the time around him, he's drunk. So poor Seamus. We hope he gets well. We hope he gets into AA one day. We're rooting for you, Seamus Coughlin. We hope you get better, and bless all your friends and family members that have to deal with you and your drunken ways.
And the halitosis, my God.
Yeah, horrible. So thank you so much.
I don't know this person. Don't want to.
Yeah, you don't.
I'm not a fan of halitosis.
Yeah, you do not. You do not want to know this man, and I've had the displeasure
If
of
you
being
ever see
introduced
a
to him.
potato patch, you'll see him rolling around in it. That's where he's usually at.
If you're lucky.
I do like potatoes, though.
He's a very, very gross man. But anyway.
This is so sad for me.
I know.
I feel so bad for
You
Seamus.
should.
Oh, no, we feel bad.
You should.
We feel bad.
Yeah, you should.
Why are you guys being so mean about him?
We're not. We're just speaking the truth here, okay?
Aw.
We're speaking the truth.
so sad.
And we hope he gets well. We hope he gets into AA. We hope his
my
rehab
God.
goes well.
Seamus is one of the co-hosts of IRL and is better than Luke. So there's a bit of a contention between. I didn't mean better. I just meant
You're
that
saying
he's,
it's a personal thing.
I think so.
Okay.
Fighting words.
Better?
Did I say that out loud?
Better?
Did I say that?
Better, Ian? Ian
Better. That's
Crossland?
not what I meant.
Better?
If that's what I said, I didn't mean that, Luke.
Were you replaced by Seamus?
No, I left. He was there, and I just couldn't stand being around him.
Because of the halitosis.
I love all this concocted drama. This is beautiful.
Ian, you're sleeping in my guest
I'll tell
room.
you the truth.
Okay,
The best
you're
shows are
sleep-
when Luke and Seamus are on together. You should get Seamus over here. See, even Atlas is into this.
Seamus is a man who doesn't keep his word. He promised to be on the show. He was supposed to launch this show with me, and then he backed out last minute with his cowardly ways. So,
So for the record, until Thursday, Luke's a better host than Seamus. Thanks for letting me stay your place.
Until Ian flies out.
Ian, I know where you sleep. I'll just leave it at that. Okay.
I'm shivering.
You should. All right, let's get back to some of the other super chats here. We have another one from Based Joe saying Amazon wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for the NSA contracts with AWS. Yes. Amazon does have a lot of federal contracts. They're also working on breaking encryption. They're also working on facial recognition technology. They're working on a lot of very Orwellian, really bad stuff. We got another, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, and they also did the favor of the federal government when they shut down Parler by killing their server, the AWS servers.
Yeah, so not a good corporation. As of course, Bezos also has specific ties to the Central Intelligence Agencies. I'll just leave it at that.
He's also building a giant clock in a mountain for no apparent reason, and it horrifies me.
Really? What's that?
It's a story that came out yesterday. He's building this gigantic clock in the center of a mountain, and I want to know why.
That's like an end times kind of situation.
Yeah.
And he has a wiener missile.
Well, that's what makes it
What does
cool.
that tell you?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I know what it says to me about that man.
He's a very astute man.
He's a very small man.
You never know. Joel Exlin has another super chat here saying, Luke, good sir, please stop blanking so hard on YouTube. It's unnecessary and bums everyone out. They're not going to ban you for saying naughty words or controversial opinions. It's not 2021 anymore, and I would disagree.
It is.
It's probably worse, as I know a lot of online content creators, Pearly Things, Next News Network, and a lot of others have been hit very dramatically here on YouTube. YouTube still the place to reach out to the normies, to the Kyles, to the Karens. A lot of, average, everyday human beings are on this platform. This is a good way to reach out to them. This is also a strategic way, and I explained this many times before. This is the strategy. Water down the message a little bit, not get too controversial, not get too down the rabbit hole, but specifically talk about issues from kind of a normie, mainline sort of issue, even though we kind of fail to do that sometimes too. But try to entice a lot of people who aren't privy to this kind of larger messaging, and then slowly bring them over to Rumble, where we go deep down the rabbit hole and we don't hold anything back. And to me, this is a good strategy that a lot of other content creators have implemented that to me is an actual smart strategy. So if you're watching right now on YouTube, head over to rumble.com/wearechange, rumble.com, and and we are there on the front page. If you can't find us on rumble.com/WeAreChange, just go to the front page, and we are highlighted here next to Glenn Greenwald. That also is going live. He usually ends his broadcast at 8, so check out our broadcast. The conversation will be continuing on rumble.com. Set up an account, download the app, subscribe, click the notification button. On Rumble, it's more important and imperative than ever, as of course you are voting with your not only dollars, with your attention, with your clicks. And it's more imperative that we incentivize alternative companies, not big behemoth giants that do not care about free speech. So when it comes to the kind of a larger temperature of what's going on YouTube, Clint just recently got a strike. Why did Clint get a strike?
Because he was naughty.
Jacob Chansley.
Can we not? Listen, we got the.
Don't you?
Yeah,
you do it, Luke.
Listen. We might have to. Might have to on
Wait,
YouTube.
Steph, you want him to do it?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Yes.
I thought
Thank
we were
you,
cool.
Steph.
I
Thank
can't
you,
believe
Steph.
you.
Yes. I appreciate the support here.
Everyone's turning against me.
Yes, you should. You should. It's like, oh, I got a strike. Let's talk about exactly what we got a strike on.
I just said who my guest was. I didn't say what we were talking about.
You're gonna get it as soon as we go on Rumble because we can't show violence here. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it.
Why do I hear a bug catcher?
Oh,
it's not a
it's
bug
a taser.
Oh.
Yes.
He threatens me with it every day. It's really not cool.
I've never been tased.
He deserves the violence. I believe in the non-aggression principle, except for Clint.
Some people have it coming.
Yes, I agree.
3
Some people.
strikes, you're out, Clint. You were late today.
Yes.
Do you ever look at people and just think they never had their ass kicked enough?
Yes.
I see that so
All the
often.
time.
Is that
All
me?
the time.
Oh no. That's I don't look at no. For me, it's usually women. Like I look at people like certain people in Congress that I look at certain women and I'm like, these women have never been put in their place.
Yes. No,
Stephanie?
What?
Are you talking about
No.
Stephanie just then?
You did you ever get punched in the face?
I have been punched in the face.
I've been punched in the face
twice.
Just twice? That's it?
3 times a lady.
What about you, Clint?
Yeah, I've been hit twice.
That's it? You guys are rookies.
I learned how to talk my
Anyway.
way out.
Why are you angering people that they're punching you so much?
Yeah. Well, no. It depends on where you grow up and your upbringing and what you've been through.
Luke's he's a street hoodlum.
Yeah, I get that.
So we're gonna move the conversation over to Rumble, where it's gonna get a lot more violent. Rumble.com. Go there right now. Sign up. And Jen, really quickly before we leave YouTube, where can people find more of your work?
Yeah, guys, check out Generational Change. That's generational with a J. We are on YouTube. We are also on Spotify and whatever the new one, whatever the iTunes thing is. And yeah, check us out.
Liberty Lockdown at Liberty Lockpod on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe and follow over there. And Liberty Lockdown, I have Ashton Forbes and Ian Carlson airing tomorrow midday. Liberty Lockdown on Rumble because YouTube doesn't like me. Check it out.
It was a wild conversation. Definitely check out Liberty Lockdown.
No one likes you, Clint.
That's not
I
true.
liked Clint. I have had Clint on my show, and I'm a bleeding heart.
You
Thank
too.
you.
You too, Ian. You're
The best. You can say it out loud, man. It's okay. I'm the best.
You're the worst. You're in my books for psychological retribution.
So far that I come in from the outside. It's it's that kind of thing.
But I forgot to mention, Gavin McInnes is on Tower Gang with me tomorrow night. So make sure you check that out. That'll be a crazy one.
All right. And follow me at Ian Crossland and subscribe to me on YouTube, Rumble, Minds, Facebook, and X. If you want to check out, I did an interview with Adam Crickler earlier. It was fantastic. We talked about the lost city of Atlantis, which is one of my absolute
That's
favorite
very
things
cool.
to talk about. I could do an hour on it on Rumble if you guys want, unless you want to talk about politics. I'm also into
We'll
that.
talk about other things. I don't know.
Hey, Steph, talk to me.
Hi. You can find me on Instagram at Steph.